Welcome everybody. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Township of Wainfleet Special Council meeting of March 1st, 2021. And I'd like to begin with the land acknowledgement statement. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples, acknowledging the One Bowl and Spoon Treaty. And we have, it's wonderful to be back in chambers again. We do have Councillor Quidlin zooming in from home though, and some of the staff are zooming in from home as well, just so that's out there, everybody knows that. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest?
None.
Okay, seeing none, we're going to move, tonight is our capital budget, and we're going to move right into that. And would like to look to our treasurer, Ms. Louie, to make her presentation, please.
Thank you. Good evening, members of council, staff, and residents viewing from home. Tonight I will be presenting the 2021 draft capital budget. I will walk you through a series of slides which discuss the capital budget process and funding sources. Then we will discuss each project with a brief description from the department, followed by any questions or deliberations council may have. Is it sharing or not sharing? Sorry, we're just trying to get the presentation up on the screen here.
Okay, just so everybody out there watching or listening, just having a little technical error right now. We'll get her fixed here, hopefully within a couple minutes.
Oh, that one we need.
Okay, looks like we have that sorted out, and we're going to proceed, Ms. Louie.
Okay, thank you. So this screen is just showing the agenda for tonight. So we'll go through a budget approval roadmap, the types of capital, the funding sources for capital, some capital funding by source, these are just some visual aids, capital by asset class, capital by department, and then we will finish up with any questions, and then as mentioned we will move into each project number. Okay, so we have 3 special meetings allocated to budget, and we are hopeful that we can get approval after that. So this evening will be capital presentations and deliberations, and then this Wednesday we will cover operating will be presented. Council can commence deliberations if they choose, or choose to digest the information and deliberate on Monday, March 8th, where the combined budget will be before council. So the budget can be approved on the 8th at the special meeting or on the 9th at the regular meeting of council. So at any point, if any of the public or council have any questions and they submit them, my contact information will be at the end of this presentation. then I'll be sure on the meeting of the 8th to address all of those questions before council. So different types of capital. So the types of capital projects for the township, the majority of them are existing capital expenditures, which is either replacement or maintaining the assets that we currently have. So funding for capital. So this slide outlines the proposed funding sources for the capital budget. Just a note, the reserve bubble on this slide includes, if you're looking at your big spreadsheet, your big summary sheet in your budget package, this bubble includes reserves, the development charges, and the modernization fund columns. Staff are proposing a variety of funding sources for the necessary projects. However, council can approve a project and recommend a different funding source or task staff to investigate other funding options. As always, staff continually monitor funding opportunities and make application whenever eligible. So this is just a diagram with a breakdown by funding source. So as you can see this year, which is unusual, grants is one of our largest funding sources. But it is tied with use of reserves. So capital tax levy. So the proposed capital tax levy contribution is $576,756. This represents a 1.98% tax levy increase. And just to note, best practice for capital contributions is approximately to add an additional 2% or inflation each year to that amount. So reserves, there are three types of reserves which include, and they're listed up there above, which is an allocation of accumulated net revenue, so any of the net revenue at the end of the year, which is often used as a stabilization rate to offset any unusual expenses. Number two is monies that are set aside for a specific purpose as defined by either the municipality or legislation. And the third type are obligatory reserves, which they can only be used for their prescribed purpose, which an example of that would be development charges. So I know this slide is likely pretty scary for some of you, seeing that number at the top there, so just hold on to that thought for a second. Okay, so the infrastructure levy. So with the commitment that council has made to contribute 2% annually to a designated infrastructure levy, I can finally say that the hard work and unpopular decisions of past large tax increases of council are finally paying off. The intent of the levy was to fast track the amount in the budget that was dedicated to capital infrastructure. With the proposed budget and using the 2020 amortization expense figure, we have surpassed that target. However, this does not mean that the hard work is over. We must continue to make capital infrastructure a priority to not undo all of the hard work that we have done over the past years. So if you see up there, the current contribution to the infrastructure levy would be the $916,951, which is compounding from previous years. And the 576 is the amount from the capital levy that's proposed in this budget. This slide speaks about debentures. So debentures can only be used to fund capital projects, and the province does put a cap on the amount of debt a municipality can issue, and this is known as the municipality's annual repayment limit. So just to attach some numbers to that, the Township of Wainfleet's 2020 annual repayment limit is $1.5 million, and this represents 25% of the township's own source revenues. So the township does, however, have an internal debt policy, which states our threshold is 10%, not the 25. So anything above 10%, as far as the provincial financial performance indicators, is considered to be high risk. So this slide just demonstrates an example of that annual repayment limit and what that would mean in terms of borrowing dollars. So these are some examples that have been provided that do come attached with the annual repayment notice from the province. So it's just examples. If you, in the next 20 years at 5% borrowing, the amount that we could actually debenture. So with all of that being said, this is just a kind of a snapshot of our current debt position without any proposed new debt. So although there is a project that we have proposed to use debt as the funding source, this is prior to that. So this is where we are to date. Just noting that the central station is on there. That obviously hasn't been debentured yet because that project hasn't moved forward. However, the amount that's included in that is the amount that was approved in the budget last year. So government funding as a source. So this one's pretty straightforward. So this is the federal gas tax that we receive annually, as well as our OCIF funding. So this slide just demonstrates some of the government grants that we have received, and it's a combination of federal and provincial funding that we have received or that we are waiting for confirmation on, which the recreation complex, so that one we have included, and that project will only move forward if the funding is received, and we are expecting to hear back from that one in the near future. The other projects have already been, the funds have already been committed to us. So those include the Lakeshore roadside safety project, the roof repair at Town Hall, the baseball backstops, which is part of the summer games funding, and again, the rec complex. So this slide just shows the carry forward amount. So there was some amounts approved in the 2020 budget that were not completed. So we've rolled those funds forward to complete those projects in 2021. Initially, early on, at the beginning of the pandemic, we kind of put a halt on all capital until we could kind of gauge the financial impact to the township that COVID was going to have on us. And as months passed and time progressed, we did eventually give the green light to the departments to proceed with the approved capital projects, but by that point it was later in the year, so some of the projects, due to timing and supplies and the nature of being able to get contractors and things like that, they weren't completed, but we are prepared to finalize those projects this year. So this slide is just a visual, and I apologize, it looks like the asset types are a little bit faint there at the bottom. This just breaks down by category. So the first column is IT, and then fire services, roads and bridges with the largest column there, facilities and buildings, recreation, and fleet and equipment. And this slide is just, again, just for visual aid. It's all using the same numbers that are represented on the summary sheet. This just breaks it down by department, all of the capital spending dollars for this year in the proposed budget. And that is it. So as mentioned, if any residents watching have any questions, feel free to send them my way, and I will be sure to respond to them at the next, or at the combined meeting of council the next time capital is addressed.
Thank you, Ms. Louie. Just a comment to the public generally. This budget I know has been a lot of work for the treasurer, the CAO, and all the heads of department. Input is ongoing all year. This just doesn't happen in like the last month. I know myself and the CAO have dollar conversations all year, And I know the councillors come in or phone in as well and have dollar conversations about different projects as well. So this is a culmination of a whole year of work by your council, and I know staff has done a great job. They've already paired out a lot of the items and leaned it out fairly well, actually, through conversations in the last number of months. And so it's already a fairly lean budget. And just thought I'd make sure that the public knew that, how much work and how much effort goes into this. And it's always with the taxpayer in mind, but keeping the township heading in the right direction as well. And as the treasurer said, we've turned the corner and we're doing quite well now in regards to getting ourselves out of the hole that we were in when we started a couple years ago. So, okay, so having said that, I'm going to guess we're probably going to want to do this like we did last year, where we just simply start on each project number one, and work through it, through the book, and have discussions and questions to Ms. Louie. And so I think having done that, and of course we have the spreadsheets here in front of us as well. But the first project, draw your attention to in my book, is the IT update. And is there anything there that anybody would like to speak to? The one thing too that's very, very important with IT is IT goes down, the whole place goes down. So it's important to keep our IT secure, and you can see a $10,000 security consulting fee in there. And you know, government businesses or agencies are still getting hacked and held ransom. So that's part of what this package is. So any questions to our treasurer on this? Oh, Councillor Quidlin.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor, thank you. And again, a great presentation from the treasurer. So thank you for getting us started tonight. In terms of IT, we saw a number similar last year for all the right reasons. And I just wondered if this is a department that we're also seeing trying to catch up. So my question is, what's our asset basket roughly for IT, so that we can know that we're going to probably see these numbers going forward? Do we know roughly what the assets are in this area?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Cridlin. So I don't have that number off the top of my head. I can look it up before this meeting is over. However, it's with how rapidly technology changes, this is predominantly just kind of maintenance and increasing technology to kind of stay up to date. And with the number of different softwares and a bunch of, like, for example, our building department just implemented a new software, so there's support that needs to go along with that, and infrastructure needs that need to support that, as well as our financial management system. So it's mainly just maintenance and keeping things going and expanding storage. Like as more things move into the cloud, we're requiring more and more storage space, as opposed to where we used to file things into the vault. Like more and more things are electronic, which is good because we can access them working remotely or at any point in time. But I will get the total number of assets for you before this meeting's out.
So thank you, and just a quick follow. It's more the knowledge of knowing we should be expecting these kinds of numbers going forward, with the complexity and the kinds of things you've just brought up around how rapid this world changes. So I'm just going to take one other liberty. I'm looking at the list. I'm not sure if included in this list would be a software that would help us with financial reporting going forward. Can you tell from the list if that might be included here?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor. So a budget hasn't been identified specifically for that type of software. However, there are some add-ons that we could get to our current financial management system, likely for low cost. So staff will investigate that to see options for the future. However, I don't believe that we necessarily need a new software. I do think over time, as the township has grown and the number of departments and accounts have grown, I think the chart of accounts likely just needs to be cleaned up a little bit so that it's easier for the average person to take a look at the accounts and see, because it is quite complicated and not everything is in the same place. So it is our goal this year to kind of streamline some of the accounts so that you can see like a consolidated version of the township's accounts, how much we spend on debt, how much we spend on computer maintenance across the whole township, as opposed to it being very departmentalized.
Thank you. No further questions.
Okay, and I just see our CAO wish to jump in there.
Just to build on what the treasurer was saying, before we expend or look at investing in that new additional software, again, from a staff perspective, we've had those discussions, and the thinking was that we go back to what we have now, try to clean up the account system we're using now, and perhaps avoid having to expend those additional funds for a piece of software if we can get our own accounting records, if you will, into better shape to start with. Again, better shape might not be the right word, but what I'm saying is in a slightly reformatted layout that will allow easier access using the software we currently have.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for the IT Project 1? Okay, seeing none, flip the page. Project number 2, road rehabilitation. And I look to our operations manager, Richard Nan. Anything there, Richard, that you would like to just inform us?
Good evening, Your Worship, members of council. First project you have in front of you is our road resurfacing project. So included in this project this year, we've included some additional asphalt patching, which we haven't done in the past. And this is to repair, because the volume of traffic we're finding and the transports we're finding coming into the township are damaging some of our roads in certain areas, for instance. And this requires localized patching, so we've included that in this year's project. You'll see that 2 of them are carryovers from last year. Youngs Road North, for instance, was a carryover because we did our municipal drain project was taking place on that road. We couldn't complete it because the hydro company had to replace all the hydro poles because they were all leaning, which meant that we literally had to leave sections of ditch there and come back once they replaced the poles. So by the time we got back to cleaning the ditches out, it was too late in the year to do tar and chip. We subsequently also received a lot of complaints from the residents in regards to transferring it from a tar and chip road to a gravel road surface. So we crunched the numbers and we thought, let's return it back to the state it was in originally, tar and chip. And we've crunched the numbers again, knowing we've already performed the ditching through a lot of it through the municipal drain. And those are included in this year's budget. Also included this year are things like Maplewood and Napoleon and Lee and Woodland. A lot of these projects are listed as our top priorities 1 through 5. You'll see that we've taken Napoleon, Lee, and Church, and we've actually placed them into a line item for 2022. And the reason why we're doing that is because we're still waiting to hear exactly where the school plans on going with their proposed school development and what they plan to do with the existing buildings. So that could increase traffic depending on what's going on in those locations. So that's what we've included this year's budget for your consideration.
Okay, thank you very much, Richard. And questions? Councillor Van Vliet.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Richard. Richard, I'm wondering about Young Road North. You have it listed as number 11, and all the other ones are numerical order. What happened to 6 through 10?
Originally, Young Road North, because we were going to pulverize it, turn it back to gravel, That was why we increased it last year, because it was the maintenance costs were getting too high on that, on the entire center section of that road. So even though the roads need study put it at number 11, because of the frost heaving and everything took place in the middle section of that road, we decided that it was best to move it forward last year.
Okay, carry on.
I'm still on Young Road. Seems like a very high number for 4 houses. When 2 are at the south end and 2 are at the north end. I drove that road today. It wasn't any worse than my road. Could we just fill the potholes and move on?
Through your worship, we've been patching a lot of that road for quite a few years, and patch just won't hold anymore. We do have to replace sections of that road.
Councillor Van Vliet, follow up.
I have to give this some thought. Thanks, Richard.
Councillor McClellan.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Richard. I drove up and down Young's Road myself. My question is, okay, where the houses are at the south end, it's not really bad. Where the houses are at the north end, it's not really bad. Why don't we just pulverize the middle, put your calcium or oil or whatever it is that you will use down there, and put some stone in, get it done, and never mind the tar and chip. Like, okay, keep the asphalt or tar and chip in front of the houses, and it stops a little bit of dust. In the middle, who cares? There's no houses there, and I'm gonna bet that there's more peat moss under that road than anything else. So to do it right, it'll be a $300,000 job. So just do it, and every year we put a little stone on it, and it's done.
Richard, comments?
Through your worship, that is always, that is something we considered. Just normally we consider doing a stretch of road, and we usually consider doing the entire section at one time rather than doing pieces. But if council chooses, we can definitely move forward with that and monitor the tar and chip at the beginning and the end, and pulverize and gravel the center section.
Approximately, what is the distance between the houses at the north end and the houses at the south end? The amount of that you
Round number, a little over half a kilometer.
Okay, yeah, I've been a couple of days since I was down there, so. Yeah. Okay, any other thoughts on that? Councillor Gilmore?
Just a question. I haven't been on it in a while, but is it a dead end?
Yes, it is.
Yep.
It's a dead end at the north end of the bog.
Okay, so the people at the one end are going to be able to get out without getting their car muddy, and the people at the other end are not.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's your choice. But to live on a tar and chip, partly tar and chip road, and have to drive through mud every day, to me, it doesn't, I follow your line of thinking, but I don't particularly see it's fair to the people that are at the dead end compared to the people at the not dead end.
Yeah, so I have a little thought on that myself. When you move onto a road, if the road is gravel, then you expect it to be gravel. If you move onto a road or build a house on a road and the road is paved or tar and chip, you expect it to remain tar and chip. To reverse it back to gravel, and I know the dollars, I understand all that, but for residents on a road, I know myself, if I moved onto a road and it became a gravel road, I would not be very happy about that because it's degrading from what I started out when I moved there. So I'm just in support of Councillor Gilmore's comment there because that's kind of how I think as well. Councillor McClellan.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I get that. But I also look at how many roads in our township have more than 4 houses on it, and they're not paved. And we have people coming in here on a regular basis asking us to do it. Leave the tar and chip in front of the houses, and there's a bad spot in the middle that I am sure just has peat moss underneath it. And Richard could probably further that, or he's probably dug test holes, he'll tell you that. And you put the tar and chip down, it's just gonna disappear again.
Yeah, and there are people that come here living on a gravel road asking us to pave it. But they started out, they moved into the house or built the house on the gravel road, and so they're asking for an upgrade. I personally believe it's not fair to citizens to downgrade the road that they live on when they move into one that's tarred and chipped on purpose so that they can have a clean car or whatever their reasons are. So that's just my thoughts. But Councillor Van Vliet.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Richard, how long has this been tar and chip?
Through your worship, I don't have those records with me. They're back in the office, but I believe it's been like that for about 18 years.
Okay, thanks. Because I know it was not originally paved or tar and chipped, but thank you.
Councillor Cridland, any comment there? I don't want to miss you.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I think what I'm hearing is this is a recommendation from staff based on recent conditions. We're following our reports. It's been explained why it moved from 11 to where it is. So we're not recommending it be degraded, and neither did the report recommend degrading. Am I correct on that, Richard? On Young Road.
Through your worship, Moore Road was supposed to be downgraded to gravel. Young Road deteriorated, the whole middle section deteriorated to the point where we couldn't keep maintaining it. So we were going to downgrade that to gravel.
Oh, we were going to, but the report didn't suggest that we downgrade that one.
The road needs study did not.
Right. So
Our report,
I'm okay
when
with
we came to council
proceeding.
last year, we did.
Oh, I see. Well, if these are our roads, we have to take care of them. I don't mind downgrading a road, so I don't have the same issue perhaps as others do around downgrading. I wouldn't want to be on a road that causes, but we have to have some matrix that forces us to do that, and that's following the report. So I'm in favor of doing this if that's what the report's telling us to do, and you've explained why it's moved up. Thank you.
Okay. I look to our CAO for comment.
Just a question to the operations manager. In the event that we proceed through the budget and this project remains in the budget, what are the next steps for that road project? You'll go to tender, you'll come back to council with a report. What are the next steps?
Through your worship, to our CEO, yes, that's correct. We will be, as these projects or as these capital works get proceed through the budget process, those that are accepted, we will be processing either in-house projects, whether we'll be contracting them out or whether we'll be tendering tender packages for bidders. We will do final reviews of these roads prior to putting the calculations in the tender quantities, just to make sure nothing has changed since last year. Excuse me, because over the winter things do alter slightly. So we do make sure we have all the numbers processed, and then we will be tendering it out in the first thing in the spring.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Van Vliet.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, I'm just a little confused here. Because Moore Road is recommended for a downgrade to gravel. It's tar and chip now or pavement, what have you. But we're okay to downgrade that to gravel? I'm just confused. Why we wouldn't okay, there's more houses on Moore Road than there is on Young Road. So why wouldn't we just downgrade both of them or upgrade both of them?
Richard.
Through your worship, to Councillor Van Vliet, yes, that was the recommendation last year, was to downgrade to gravel because the conditions of both of those roads. But we've included this year's numbers, and we've gone over the numbers, and we believe we can turn and chip both of them, bring them back to the original condition, which is what the residents were accustomed to and what they had previously for those budget line items.
Thank you.
Okay, so is any other discussion on this? We leave it the same as is, and perhaps as per the CAO's comment, revisit it. I see Councillor McClellan has his hand up again, please.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. Can we come back and look at, like, everything we're doing here? We're going through this first kick at the can. We do get a chance to come back and look at this, so we could say, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we're not approving this tonight. I think what we're going to end up doing is do all the budget, and then on the 9th, is it? probably the 8th. Yeah, probably that'll be the evening that we, so, all right, so there's, yeah, put a sticker on that one and we'll come back to it.
Mr. Mayor, one final comment on that one. If you're looking at the budget page on that project, I just want to draw your attention to the project net total line at the bottom of the top half of the page, which shows as 15,353. And the treasurer can correct me if I'm wrong, but that 15,353 represents the tax levy amount that that we're talking about here. The remainder of the sum, which is 888,000, is funded from alternative sources, be it deferrals from prior year, reserves, development charges, etc. So even if you were to say completely remove those two projects from the list, very likely you would not see any levy impact or any significant levy impact because of the alternate sources of funding. So there is opportunity to come back and revisit or review these projects moving forward.
Okay, thank you. That's an important note for sure. That a lot of it has already been designated through grants and that sort of program. Okay, nothing further there. We'll flip over to Project 3, Bridges. And I think, Richard, you're in the hot seat on that one again, too.
Through your worship to members council, I think I have the first whole rack there, but this one here is again, it's our bridge work that we've had inspections performed on. As you know, Gents Road is inspected yearly now because of the weight restrictions we placed on it. And then the rest of the bridges have been inspected on a biannual basis. Staff again are recommending that Gents Road Bridge be replaced with double culverts. This year we're including a couple other additional projects. The bridge report this year identified that we have some scouring along the erosion or the footings of the bridges, including Quarry Road, which is our newest bridge, and the Malawani Bridge. So staff are recommending that we put some scour protection in place to protect those footings. The other two bridges listed are the two fiberglass bridges. As council's aware, these were put in prior to 2015. And we're finding infiltration in the center line of those decks. We've reviewed the decks with our bridge inspector. We've gone back and forth on this over several weeks to try and figure out what we can do with them because they are fiberglass. But we believe that the best course of action would be to remove the asphalt that's on top of it, waterproof them all over again, and then put new asphalt back down. This way it'll stop as a one complete layer unit of waterproofing to stop the infiltration and the rusting it's causing on the steel girders underneath that.
Okay, thank you. Questions? On the bridges, we deferred Gents Road Bridge last year, and I know it's getting worse and worse and worse, so we really got to tackle that bridge this year. So, Councillor McClellan.
Okay, through you, Mr. Mayor. I still think Gents Road Bridge should be eliminated completely, but the bridge work has to get done. It doesn't go up a percentage, it doubles and triples every year you let it go. So, but as far as I'm concerned, Gents Road Bridge, there should be a cul-de-sac on each end and forget the bridge. There's only 8 cars on that a day when we did the traffic study.
No, it was 40
cars.
or 45.
42. And while we were at the meeting, 2 ladies told me they made sure they drove over it 8 times a day when they saw the cable there. So there's 8 cars a day go across the thing. It's a waste of money, but we've beaten that horse to death, I guess.
Yeah, we did hear loud and clear from a lot of the residents in the area.
Yeah.
We're very much in favor of keeping it open, of course, but yeah. So any other discussion? Bridges, Councillor Van Vliet?
Well, I'm not sure where I sit with Gents Road. I mean, I've lived here a long time and I've only driven over it 4 times. One was today because I went just because I had to take another look at it. There's 8 houses on that road. One is south of the bridge and the rest are all north of the bridge. I'm not going to lie, it was a scary thing driving over in my truck. We either have to fix it or we have to get rid of it because it's not going to hold any kind of equipment this year, any kind of farming equipment. I mean, I would not want to be driving a tractor across it. But Richard, I do have a question about Quarry Road. Was that not replaced in the last 12 years and it already needs maintenance on it?
Through your worship to Councillor Van Vliet, yes, I mean, it's just the corners of the footings themselves. Now, that could be caused by several things. We know that the bridge area is being used by the kids an awful lot. And I'm not saying the kids are removing some of the rocks to make a nice diving platform, but those are the corner areas that are requiring some additional rock. We do have to do something with stopping them from jumping off the bridge anyways, because if we do put the extra protection in there, we need to do that. It could be caused natural, well, because let's face it, it is a natural quarry and is spring fed, so it does have some certain underlying currents. But they're minor in nature, and if we can protect the footings now, is when we need to get at them.
Go ahead.
Okay, I'm just going to continue. Does the MPCA own part of that bridge? Could we get some funding from them for that?
Through your worship to Councillor Van Vliet, unfortunately, we own the bridge, we own the right-of-way, and it was our project. Part of the, like even if you went through the drain reports, municipal drains, etc., all road crossings and bridges, etc., are the sole expense of the township. So unfortunately, I wish we could, but unfortunately we can't.
Thank you. I just have one more question. I'm all on board for Meisner Road Bridge because I don't know if everybody's aware, there's going to be an awful lot of heavy equipment going up and down that road. So that if that one's on here, I think that we need to tend to that one with the big farming equipment that's going to be going down there in the future.
Okay, thank you. So 5 bridges on the books for this year, and the bulk of the money towards the Gents Road Bridge. Any other questions on that tonight that we want to ask? We have Councillor McClellan's thoughts on that. So, Councillor Cridland, anything? We're all good?
Through you, Mayor, thank you. We might talk about, funding streams later, but the actual work is fine. Thank you.
Okay, moving on. Project 4, Lakeshore Road Retaining Wall. Richard, please.
Through your worship, to members of council, again, this is the Lakeshore Road Safety Project, Phase 2. As you recall, Phase 1 was last year where we tendered out for engineering for the design of the storm sewer, as well as the retaining wall to support the road's edge. This is now moving into Phase 2. The Phase 1 is almost complete. We're hoping to have the results or the finalized plans, preliminary plans in our hands within the next few weeks. So we can move on to Phase 2, which we'll be getting permits and the necessary easement agreements in place with the landowners. We'll have them finalized, and then we can start the project this year. As you're aware, if you've noticed in the budget package, we did receive funding for $468,000 for this as one of our grant applications that we filled in. So we've been fortunate that way. So we're hoping to move forward with Phase 2.
Okay, thank you. So, yeah, that's excellent. $468,000 granted to us to assist in this repairs. Any questions, Councillor McClellan?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So this job, Richard, if things go right, will be done this year? This won't be something that carries over a couple of years?
Through your worship, Councilor McClellan, I am hoping to get this off the books this year, yes. The design should be ready in the next couple of weeks. Pending budget approvals, etc., we can start submitting for permits. And then we could start preparing the tender package once we get the engineers' quantities down, and we can go from there. And we should be able to tender it out early spring.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions on Councillor Cridlin? Go ahead.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Again, not quite under the ops department, but this is the first one that we're able to use the funding from a settlement that we received. So I'm very happy to see that we're making good use of those funds. I have some questions just about the funding source, not the project. So I'm going to save those and address those to the treasurer later in the evening. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Seeing no further questions, moving on then to Project 5, Lake Erie Storm Restoration. And Richard, please.
Your Worship, members of council, again, this is a result of the Halloween storm damage. As you're aware, we applied for funding through the government disaster relief and still haven't heard anything. So staff are presenting projects moving forward. Both these projects, because of COVID and because of some of the issues that we had dealing with, trying to make sure we had all the money available to do these projects. These two were slated for last year, but we didn't get off the ground with them. We did move forward with the Ellsworth project. So that one is, again, we got off the ground late, but that one is in the final stages on Ellsworth. And these two projects will be moving forward this year. As a carryover from last year.
Okay, thank you very much. Questions? Okay, seeing no questions. Project 6, large culverts. Richard?
Through your worship, I'm going to ask Mark, our drainage superintendent, to weigh in on this project.
Great, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Sorry, it just seems like I'm getting an error message on my video, so unfortunately I'll just do audio. So the large culverts and drain works projects for 2021 includes the Section 78 Engineers Report Update for the Indian Creek Drain. That report was provisionally adopted by Council in January of this year. So that project's going to include 3 new road culverts at Concession 6, Gracie Road, and Henderson. Also, from 2021, we carried forward the Bridgewater municipal drain from the 2020 capital budget. So that's another Section 78 report update and includes 3 new road culverts. And those are at Far Road, Elsie, and Traver. So both of those report updates will be tendered and constructed, hopefully in 2021. And the last piece in this item was the Little Forks drain at Henderson Road. That culvert requires replacement. It's approximately an 11.5-foot diameter arch pipe, so a pretty large pipe, and the work will take place this summer, be completed jointly between the drainage and the roads departments.
Okay, thank you. Questions, concerns? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Mark. Project 7, guide rails. Richard?
To your worship, to yourself and members of council, before you is the guide rail replacement submission for consideration. This is a result of a road safety study that was performed for us. And these were the direct initial top priority locations for repairs. If you notice on your list, one of the first locations was Lakeshore Road east of Station. Which, as you're aware, we had to complete in November of last year because of the storm we received. And it literally took out a third of the guide rail. So we replaced it right away because of the safety the need for safety. So that's included in this budget. And we're proposing to do one of those locations, which is the Phillips Road. And then we will be deferring the next 3 for 2022.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Councillor Cridland.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. So again, for this basket of work, it's to Richard. Thank you. The deferral, the reason for the deferral, and for us seeing it now, can you just help me understand why they're here and we're not doing them?
Well, to be honest, I prepared an entire list for submission for capital. As we go through the process internally with staff, we look at what the increases, potential increases are going to be the tax levy and where the funding sources are. So we try to take the top priorities of our work, and we've decided internally that because of the financing purposes, we will postpone them to 2022 as long as we start doing them in priority order. But again, if council, if we find that we want to continue adding, then there's a net financial result to doing that.
Thank you. Just a follow-up then through you, Mayor.
Certainly.
So if we were in a situation in September and for whatever reason our budget was still under, like we still had room, would it be logical you would just go to the next one, or you'd come back to council and say, look, we're in a good situation, we'd like to do Hewitt? How would that work to get to the next one if there was a way to do that?
Through your worship to Councillor Cridlin, well, based on our procurement policy, I would have to come back to council because it is, most of them are sitting up over 42,000, 60,000. I would have to come back to council to say, we've come under budget in certain areas and we can reallocate those funds. But that will be a report that would have to come back to council for consideration.
Thank you. I'm looking forward. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Any other, Councillor McClellan?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Richard, I just have one question. I know most of what we have is the hard guardrail. The gentleman came in last time, I think the last council meeting, and asked about the cable one. I do see it all along the highways in the north. I don't know if that's less expensive, does the same job, more expensive, does a better job. Is that something you've looked into, and this is what you know, so I'm just asking the question.
Through your worship to Councillor McClellan, I have started investigating. I have found it in the OPS standards and the specs. The difficulty is I'm still trying to find a supplier in the area or an installer in the area that installs those. So even though the initial tender would have said steel guide rail, if I can find a supplier close by that's willing to bid, then we can alter the tender specs to make sure that it meets the OPS standards at the time. And we may be able to save ourselves some money on this other style if we can find a supplier or an installer in the area that's willing to do that. And at what cost, obviously.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, that'd be great because, yeah, as that gentleman pointed out there, it may save us some money and do the same job. So, anything further with Project 7, guide rails? Okay, seeing none, going to Project 8, sign reflectivity. $18,000. Question, or Richard, you speak to that, please.
Through your worship to members of council, this project, we actually discussed it last year, but since last year, there's a new traffic manual that has come out. It's called Ontario Traffic Manual Book 4 Guidelines. And the new traffic guideline manual is actually recommending that we have a complete inventory, a proper inventory GPS location of all our signs. We could still, reflectivity is only a portion of the sign inventory. The rest of it is the actual signage, the location, GPS location, as well as a physical documented inventory of all our signage. So we will continue to be able to do some of our reflectivity, but we don't currently have the capabilities of GPSing all our locations for our signs. So we would be able to perform both methods at the same time. We would get the inventory done as well as the sign reflectivity, and any recommendations that will come out of that reflectivity we'll be able to budget accordingly.
Okay, thank you. How often would we have to do this, Richard? The reflectivity of all our signs?
Through your worship, the method that we're still doing, we have to do a reflectivity study every single year. That's part of our minimum maintenance standards. But we currently use the manpower method where we use an older individual with an older pickup truck. That is fine. The issue is the actual inventory of what we have and the locations of all these signs are. Once we have that in hand, and any sign replacements or any sign installations that are new, we will be able to navigate through technology nowadays. We'll be able to navigate where those signs are and add them to the inventory as we move forward. So we may not have to do an actual reflectivity study similar to this for quite a few years.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Cridland?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. I think you're just about wrapping up your big ones here, Richard, but before we leave your department, I didn't see anything this year on anything to do with street calming, street safety. We have seen it in past budgets, so I just wondered if that's maybe coming through operations. We can wait on that. And then the other thing that is out there that I don't know if it falls under capital, it would probably fall under your department, any capital needs for our beach solutions. So again, they might be small enough that that's a maintenance, you know, an operational type of thing, but just before we leave your department, maybe you could just comment briefly that we'll see those later.
Through your worship, to Councillor Cridland, yes, we installed the one set last year. We're hoping to get a year's worth of data out of that. So not just last year, but we're trying to get another year's worth to see if it's actually done what we were hoping to do for the whole year. We do have the two signs now, the speed signs, and we still continue to plan on moving them in various locations for various reasons. As we receive complaints of speeding, as well as we want to do future capital works, we want to do a new road count on them, or we want to do it in areas that we want more information or more data as we move forward. If there's things that are changing, traffic patterns, etc. So we'll be able to utilize those for various purposes, and that now falls under operating. That just falls into our normal operating budget now.
Thank you for that.
Just along that line too, I know our those pylons we bought and the pinch points there that we put in on Lakeshore, I think they worked rather well, to be honest with you, from what I heard. And there was a request there for people asking for them to be installed all along Lakeshore. So I don't know if that would fall into any of our capital here. I can't remember what they cost. They were a couple $1,000s a set. So, but anyway, for a discussion later. Okay, anything more on the sign reflectivity? No. Project 8, operations fleet. The backhoe and pickup truck. Go ahead, Richard.
I've got my numbers all wrong. Sorry, Your Worship.
So it's number 9, number 9.
Okay, so I do have my okay. Yes, we're currently looking at replacing our 2007 case backhoe. It is currently over 5,988 hours. We did have to replace the cluster at a certain point because it stopped working. But as we've reviewed it going on for our maintenance program, it needs a substantial amount of repairs coming in the future. Pins, bushings, etc., are starting to really wear out. So we're proposing to replace that one, as well as truck 123, which is a 2001 GMC pickup truck. It is currently at 187,000 kilometers, almost 188,000. But because of the age, it's really starting to show its wear on the body and the paint. We've managed to keep the maintenance cost fairly in check through our maintenance program. But it's really starting to show its wear and schedule for replacement. It should have been replaced years ago, but it's in good condition. Similar to truck 18, it's actually on our list for replacement, but it's in great shape as well, and it's got low kilometers. So we're extending the life of some of these to try and break up some of our fleet purchasing.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Councillor McClellan?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Richard, and I don't know if this is your department or who gets it, but this backhoe, do we just trade it in? Like, how do we get rid of this backhoe? And, like, do we just trade it in to whoever is the low bidder on the job? Do we take it, send it to Richie's auction? How do we get rid of it? Because there should be, in this $165,000, there should be $30,000 or $40,000 worth of trade-in on this backhoe.
Through your worship, to Councillor McClung. Yes, this particular backhoe we will be actually handing down into the roads backhoe currently will go to the cemetery department, and then the cemetery department's backhoe will go out for public auction, and usually on gov deals. We didn't include a price on it because we're not sure exactly what that price tag will be. But that money, whatever does come back in for the sale of the older unit, does go automatically back, I believe, into the reserve, the township fleet reserves.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on that? Okay, seeing none, moving on. Project 10, roadside mower assembly. Richard.
To your worship, I'm sorry to take up everybody's time tonight, but this item is our roadside mower assembly unit. So it's not the tractor and it's not the pump or the hydraulic tank. This is strictly the attachments on the end of the arms. As you know, I mean, we do a lot of roadside mowing in this town, and they get worn out pretty quickly. So we're recommending that we just replace the flail mower on the side and rear, as well as the arm and mower on the arm assembly, which reaches the backsides of the ditches. We do have 2 of these units, only one with an arm assembly, but 2 units that have the side flail and rear flail. And as we go through time, the second unit, we are proposing that we don't replace it in future, that we lease that one in future, but this is our mainline unit, and we actually run this tractor pretty much year round with the arm, in winter time especially. But this unit is also scheduled to be deferred. We were hoping to get it this year, but this again, as Councillor Cridlin mentioned, we go through these things, we propose them, but we are also planning on deferring this one till 2022 as well.
Okay. Questions, Councillor McClellan?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Richard, would you have any idea, or can you get me the number of hours a year this thing works? And that, you know, what the tractor works, what the mowers work, you know, they're not the same, I'm sure of that, but I'd really like to know how many hours we're getting for $86,000 on using something. Maybe it's something we should be subbing the whole thing out, and it works for, if it's 500 hours, we shouldn't really own it a year. We should sub it out and get it, and then let somebody else worry about the maintenance.
Richard?
Through your worship, I will look at our maintenance program and try and get you those numbers for our next meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on Project 10, the mower? Okay. Oh.
So through the mayor to all of council, so yeah, just to clarify, this project, the ones, as Councillor Cridlin mentioned earlier, there are some projects that are listed in here and some that are listed as being partially proposed to be done in 2021 and the rest deferred. We did leave them in so council had the opportunity to see the projects that were originally presented for capital this year, and in the event that perhaps council cuts a certain project or decides that this project they would like to see happen above a different project, that's why we did still include the projects and all of the detail. But since this one is slated to be deferred to 2022, that will give us an opportunity to investigate the man hours, the hours that this equipment uses, to try to see if it's the best use of funds to purchase or to lease.
Okay, thank you. Okay, seeing no further questions on that. Project 11, the fire fleet. And I think our chief is with us.
Good evening, members of council and Mr. Mayor. So the first project is a replacement engine for Engine 2. Engine 2 is a 1999 International two-door, two-seat. It's an aging piece that through fire underwriters and NFPA is no longer recognized. Fire underwriters has recently, I think as previously reported, reviewed our stations and has degraded Station 2 to no fire protection. So the idea here, we had to, in 2019, we had to rebuild that pump. So we would be able to keep it as a reserve pump once the new station is constructed. Knowing that Station 3 isn't set for replacement for some time, and that Engine 3, which is a 2003 Kenworth, the idea would be is that we spec a truck that would fit Station 3. That would be there for the 20 years that it lives there. If Station 3 ends up being rebuilt, then that truck will fit, obviously. And then Engine 3, the 2003 Kenworth, would move to Station 2, therefore bringing recognition back to that hall until such time that the central station is complete. That would buy us 2 more years to get that station completed and bring all 3 of the stations back to recognized status for fire underraters. So the idea here, we have set some monies aside through reserves for the last couple of years. So the idea would be to fund it through a series of reserves, some use of the modernization, and the debenture. Now, I will say that debenture amount can be greatly reduced. If we get to the operations side, we do have scheduled to put in another 100 plus into reserves that we could draw from depending on when the truck is delivered. It may end up, whether it be the end of this year or into early 2022, that we could pull from, reducing the amount that's required to be borrowed.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Councillor McClellan.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Chief Alcott, I'm just wondering, when do you think we'll have prices on the fire hall? When will the drawings, you've been talking to these gentlemen now, Ramondo, when do they expect to have it out? When can we put it to tender?
I am still waiting to have an agreement to move forward from Ramondo. We're currently under legal review with that agreement, and that has not been completed yet, pending legal review.
Okay, because I'm just hearing on the street that the prices are going through the roof, and hopefully we get our fire hall built for what we think we're going to get it. But I hate to have almost $400,000 in debentures that we can't go and grab if we decide to build this building, even if it is over budget. I'm just wondering, can we put this thing on hold till maybe September? And if our prices come in right, then order the truck then. And that way, if the prices don't come in right and we decide to still build the fire hall, we've got some more money we can borrow. I'm just thinking it might be the smart way to do that.
So from a funding strategy, you'll see on Wednesday when we get to operating, the first phase of the fire station repayment plan is set to be phased in this year. Even though the debenture doesn't hit yet, phase 1 of that repayment will be included. As for this truck, I mean, I've reported several times since 2019 of our aging fleet and the cost drivers to maintain this. You know, the idea here, unfortunately, if we continue to push this truck much further, we're going to quickly see that we have a truck in 23, 24, 25, 26, year to year to year. That's not optimal. We want to space them out. And so, you know, certainly we can do that, but it does affect our insurance recognition and it does affect our abilities to purchase future apparatus.
Thank you.
What do you mean insurance recognition? Can you define that a little bit better for me, Chief?
So Fire Underwriter Services, they do a survey of fire departments across the country. And what they do is they provide a grading of what the fire department can provide to the citizens. And that is what insurance companies use to determine your premiums for fire protection. So in our case, in dwelling protection, there's 5 grades, 1 being the best municipal career and 5 being no protection. Stations, so Burnaby, Winger, and Station 4 in Wellandport are currently recognized as 4 or 3B, and Station 2, not having a tanker and not having a pumper that's recognized, is currently recognized as 0 fire protection for those in the middle of the township.
Okay, so as we continue to improve our fire department, the citizens should see a decrease in insurance. Is that really where I'm going with this? As we get better, there should be, by the insurance companies, more recognition of better fire coverage? Is that what you're saying?
I have contacted a couple of brokers, and if we can increase our insurance, our grading from a 5 to a 3A, which will be a tanker shuttle accreditation, our residents should see anywhere between 15 to 20% savings in their premiums.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Gilmore.
Thank you, Mayor. This may be to the treasurer. Just a question, what is the planned term for the debenture?
Through the mayor to Councillor Gilmore. So typically for a truck, like any of the ones that we've debentured in the past, we generally do a 5-year term.
Okay, that's good to hear. I'm wondering whether, I'm just going to take the sort of the opposite approach to Councillor McClellan. And I guess this comes back to a concern about our outstripping our reserves and not keeping up with income. And the infrastructure levy is, as you pointed out, doing a good job. However, if we keep burning through reserves faster than we replenish them, that's a bit of a problem. They're hard to replenish. And in my view, in this current economic environment where we have some good window of cost certainty regarding interest, I'm wondering whether we should consider increasing the debenture to 450 and saving a bit on the reserve side until some of these other costs that, as Councillor McClellan pointed out with the fire hall, which are A, going to be a lot larger, and B, a little more volatile, I'm sure, manifest themselves. So we can ponder, I guess, that, but I guess I'm glad to hear that it's only 5 years, but in my view, I'd rather debenture the 450 in the current climate and save on the reserves. Would be my preference. But I think if we're sticking with 5 years, that's good. It doesn't stretch it out well past the lifespan of the vehicle. But
I look to the treasurer for comment, please.
Yeah, so through the mayor to Councillor Gilmore. So this way, knowing last year the appetite for debenture amongst council, so we did try to strike a balance here with a use of reserves. And the initial intent, when I was talking about the infrastructure levy, so the initial intent of the infrastructure levy is those funds that are already in the budget will then shift into capital day-to-day spending, and then that infrastructure will continue to grow, which will be reserves, which will then get us to a place where we don't need to draw from the reserves annually because we already have that built into our spending each year. But we're in this kind of limbo year where we haven't fully transitioned into having that in the budget. But we halfway are, if that makes any sense. So we're spending we're spending a good chunk of the infrastructure contribution in the current year, in this year as proposed, but we haven't fully switched it over into spending and started rebuilding the reserves per se. But that will come. But the intent of creating that levy was to then flip it over into actual spending into the operations to make sure that we could maintain that level of spending, because the asset management plan does propose options that present 900,000 in capital spending per year, 1.5, and the optimal being 2 million. So we're at about 1.5. So we've almost achieved the optimal plan to achieve our asset management goals.
Okay, thank you. So you have obviously from that, Mallory, it's all planned. You're looking well into the future to see how the dollars are going to be flowing, reserve versus other methods of spending. So it's all planned out. Okay, any other questions of the chief on this? Oh, sorry, Donna. Councillor Cridlin, go ahead.
Nope, thank you through you, Mayor, to the chief. We've picked a number of 600,000 for this particular item. How do you come up with that number, and what if it's only 400,000?
So what I've done, I met with the officers, and knowing that that was the station that we were targeting, we looked at the community and what that truck would need to do. Obviously, we went back to the master fire plan and the operational review, which talked about apparatus. We set out the needs, and I actually contacted 4 manufacturers before Christmas to get some preliminary pricing, so that way I could develop this budget. Now that said, that was 22. These were demo trucks or stock trucks. Anything it should we go beyond, we want to customize. As I'm sure you may recall, when we were doing our station tours last year, some of the truck prices were up well over 700. So the idea here would be to use a demo truck or a stock truck that we can modify a little bit, and that keeps the price down. In the event that the tender comes in lower than this, certainly that would reduce the amount that is required to debenture.
So I'll just, through you, Mayor, if I can just then go the other side. It's very realistic then, in your opinion, at this point, that number should get us a truck. I guess that's really the bottom line. All right, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gilmore.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to the chief. What's the potential residual value of the 99?
I don't know at this point, but the intent would be, right now we don't have a reserve apparatus. So anytime one of our pumps is out of service, which, as we know, they're aging and happens quite regularly, we have an entire station that is out of service. So the intent would be to keep this truck, unlike what we did with the 2 previous that we disposed of in early 2019, would be to drain the water of this and keep it as a reserve piece in the event that we have catastrophic breakdowns that we've seen before.
Okay. Any more questions on this one?
Well, I get either it's useful or it isn't to mothball it. I mean, if it has no value, I guess you can mothball it, but generally my experience with mothballing heavy equipment is not well. I think we just make sure that we're buying good stuff and get rid of it, because, you know, otherwise we're going to be starting our own scrapyard.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So,
I agree with that.
But we can, I mean, that's a side issue to buying the new one. That decision can be made, and it may not have a lot of residual value. It comes back to the same question that Councilor McClellan had about, you know, what are we going to get for the backhoe, and really, if you don't include that amount when you say the net total, it's not the net total, but anyway, disposing of it is another, or keeping it is another discussion. So.
Yeah, and I lean that way as well. An old truck like that sits there, everything dries out, falls apart, and then it doesn't start when you do need it. It's just, equipment needs to run all the time to be useful.
It needs this, it needs that.
Chief, you had your hand up again?
Yeah, so I mean, certainly we can dispose of it if that's council's direction. Just understanding that the design for the fire station, one of the apparatus bays, was included for a reserve pump, knowing that we don't have any. And to touch on, you know, if we're getting rid of it, why keep it? Understanding that both fire underwriters and NFPA say that frontline pumpers are recognized for 20 years, that you can keep them as a reserve apparatus up to 25.
And how old is it now?
22.
So by the time we get done, you're only talking a couple of years, so you might as well, sell it.
If I may, in 2023, the Kenworth will then be 20 years old, and we can keep it for another 5 as the reserve piece.
Okay, anything else on this? Okay, seeing no further questions, we'll turn the page to Project 12, the PE Public Works Building.
Through your worship, to members of council, this is a carryover project from last year. It is to repair the block foundation around the Public Works Building. Originally, we estimated the cost of the project to be $8,000. when the budget numbers came in, or the quotes came in, it was more than double the price. So we held off on that project last year, and we're bringing it forth this year with the understanding of the 8,000 to be carried over from last year.
Yeah, questions? Looks like we need to get that done before it's doubled again, so any other questions? Seeing none. Project 13, Town Hall Building. Richard?
Through your worship, this is the roof replacement. As you're well aware, we were applying for a grant for this, and we're hoping to offset the cost from reserve and the grant. And some of it was remaining carryover from 2020. And we're hoping to finalize that project this year, and we'll be changing it over from a cedar shingle roof to a metal roofing for a longer lifespan.
Okay, questions? Councillor Van Vliet?
Mr. Mayor, Richard, just one question. Are we replacing the skylights, or are we just covering over them? Is there I think there's skylights, isn't there?
No, they're the dormers, you mean? Oh, the one skylight, yes. Yeah, there's one skylight, and that's in the building officials room. At the moment, we're planning on leaving it, but we plan on waterproofing the entire thing. Usually when you do a lot of roofing, they only waterproof a certain distance up, but we'll be waterproofing the dormers and the entire roof from one end to the other, underneath the metal roofing.
That was my only concern, because I haven't met a skylight yet that hasn't leaked, so I was just wondering.
A smart man I know once said there's only two kinds of skylights, those that leak and those that are going to leak. That was Terry. So, yeah, something we should look at, you know, whether it's, I don't know how much light it provides, or, you know, possibly it'd be cheaper just to remove it and put a tin right over it, so save a few dollars as well. So, okay, any other questions? Terry? Councillor Gilmore?
Thank you, Mayor. Just while I got your attention about the town hall, and this is not particularly related to this project, but how much longer are we going to look at that mini pod that's outside?
I can speak to that one if you want, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, please do.
There was some renovation going on in the basement, and that is currently, that basement piece was used for fire storage, public education materials, bunker gear, uniforms. That has since become part of the new vault, and we've lost that storage. So I've had to lease that pod for a year until the new station's built. So that way we have a spot to store our fire equipment.
Could it be stored over at the fire hall?
Where?
I don't know. I'm asking you. I don't know.
Yeah, so I did. I met with Richard and with William and the deputy, and we kind of went through what makes the most sense operationally for the deputy and I to have access to it, and that made the most sense. It's under the roof. It's protected. I understand it's an eyesore, but unfortunately, that's what we have to live with until we get the new station.
Okay, I'll look to Councillor Van Vliet.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, maybe Richard can answer this. What about, could we store it in the arena, behind the kitchen in the Moore room?
Through your worship, to Councillor Van Vliet, store what are you referring to? The actual pod itself?
Well, no, because don't want the cost or the eyesore of the pod, just the stuff that's in the pod, whatever we're storing. Can it be?
I'm not sure what's in the storage unit itself. You would have to ask the chief if we could do that. I'm not sure.
I'd like to, the CAO wants to speak to this, please.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we will have another meeting, and we will review what is stored in there, what options we have for storage within existing facilities. If we're unable to accommodate within existing facilities, then we will look at potential safe locations to store it, so that it's not a visual eyesore at Town Hall. As the fire chief advised, we did do some renovations to the lower vault area because of flooding, and those renovations are, I think we've got the kitchen area finished off now, so we're very near completion of that. So we will certainly meet again and see what we can do about addressing the concerns you've raised this evening.
Okay, thank you. Anything else on Project 13, Town Hall buildings? Councillor McClellan?
Just one thing. Maybe somewhere while we're doing this, we can get rid of that mosquito pond that's behind there as well.
Oh.
That's right
Not
behind the
our
back
property.
door.
It's not our property.
Find a way to get rid of the water. That's causing our problem inside the building,
Yeah.
right? I'm sure the church will let us put a sub-drain and get it to a catch basin.
Oh, that's
Right?
perhaps that is not our property, unfortunately, so. Okay, flipping the page, Project 14, Fire Hall number 3. Chief?
Yeah, so to talk to this one, a couple of these pieces are carryover from 2020. Some of the newer items is the potable water cistern and some of the plumbing related items. There was a building assessment done by Kalos Engineering in 2015 that identified a series of projects to be completed. And so this would wrap up a bunch of them to carry over from 2020 into 2021.
Okay, questions? Councillor Gilmore?
Thank you, Mayor, to the chief. Just the CO and exhaust system, I assume those are just large fans in the upper wall?
That's correct.
Councillor Cridland?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. These are probably, this 13 or 14 and 15 are, you know, pretty much the same. So maybe just in general, in terms of the work, whether it waits for this year or maybe next year, again, it's just one of those things with all the moving parts with the fire department this year, particularly, you know, the fire hall. And if it waited for the 1 year, I'm wondering if we can push these both out for another year, just till we get, you know, more information on this fire hall. So just some thoughts on that. Otherwise, you know, like you said, this is a study-driven improvement. So I'm not questioning that the improvements have to be done. I'm just worried about our timing this year. It's still going to be a little bit of an unusual year as we kind of move forward. And I just want to make sure we've got, you know, the priority on the fire hall. So maybe your comments, or else it's not really a budget concern. It's really just approving the work. I would prefer not to approve the work this year. So maybe you comment on that. Thank you.
Sure. So I'll speak to the need for them first. So Kalos Engineering, when they did the study, outlined the immediate needs, the 5 to 10, the 1 to 5, and then the 5 to 10. All of these items that are listed are already delinquent or behind in that plan. But one of the things, a lot of the reasons for the carryover is very similar to what Richard spoke to, was the pause and then the delay due to the initial response to COVID. When that was happening, staff still did all of the back work. So we did the engineering, we've done the plans, we've done the scopes. All we need now is council to approve the carry forward, and we're ready to go to tender with these projects. So from a capacity standpoint, I'm able to continue to move forward, and the deputy is able to move and handle these projects.
Okay, follow up, Councillor Cridland?
Thank you. That's good. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor McClellan?
Just one quick question. Instead of going with copper piping, everybody's gone to that PEX now. Every new house, all of that is the plastic. Maybe we should just look at that. And if you do get a leak, any guy can fix it. You don't have to be a plumber, right? Or know how to solder, and there's no flame involved, there's nothing, so.
Yep. Thoughts on that,
Yep.
Chief? Could save us a little.
Yeah, that's fine. This is just a direct quote from Kalos.
Yeah.
Certainly PEX. I do have experience with PEX, and my concern though is it is plastic based, and they have changed the formula 4 times in 30 years. Copper's the same for the last 80. So from a chemical and leaching standpoint, I need to weigh those odds. But I agree, certainly PEX is a cost-effective option.
Okay, follow up, Councillor McClellan? No, none. Any other questions, Councillor Cridland? Anything else? Okay, is that it for 14? Project 15, Fire Hall 4. Chief?
Yeah, so as Councillor Cridlin pointed out, very similar to 14. The only difference this time is the inclusion of wall insulation and steel replacement. So in 2020, we did the roof insulation. And while we were doing that, we had the company inspect the wall insulation. The steel has been kind of patched together over the years and is a bunch of different colors. And unfortunately, some of the leaking did migrate into the walls. So the intent here would be to address those issues this year. So that way that station is freshened up, is more energy efficient, and is able to serve for however many more years it is required to do.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Councillor Van Vliet?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the chief, I'm just wondering, under general repairs and parking maintenance, what would be general repairs that isn't already covered in here?
So when we get into pulling the steel off, if there's any overages, say we have to repair some wiring or we have to repair a piece of the structure, then we can manage that. And as for parking lot, I guess that's a misnomer on my part. I shouldn't have said maintenance. We do have a couple of low spots where we actually have to dig that out, and it's going to be over that $500 threshold, and it is a fixed asset. So that's why the parking lot would have to be a capitalized project.
Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Cridland.
Thank you, through you, Mayor, to the chief. I know this is on both reports, but can you just explain why we're doing the potable water cistern and treatment system? Maybe what was there before, which is probably nothing, and how much work has been done on that, and maybe those two pieces, if they haven't been started. Again, I'm just looking for less work, activity, not the final product, but just comment on the potable water systems then, please.
Yeah, so right now, both fire stations, they do have cisterns. They are fed through the roof drains. They do not have any filtration on them. They are strictly used for filling fire trucks and for washing trucks. Unfortunately, what that means is any water that's the same water that unfortunately is used for bunker gear use when they're washing themselves. They do have washrooms. They don't have showers. But, at some point I'd love to put a shower in these facilities, and, not having water that's clean for our firefighters is an issue. We have done initial assessments when we were digging the holding tanks for the septics. We know approximately the soil depths and the tanks that would be needed. But certainly, if council directed us to pull that, we could, but just know that it would be something that would have to be addressed later.
Okay, follow up.
Okay, thank you. That's, it's just good to know the status of it, and it's a significant improvement in a good way, and obviously it's a long-term investment. So thank you for that.
Okay, any other questions? Seeing none, flipping the page. Project 16, Fire Hall Alarm.
Okay, yeah, I can speak to this one. So initially, last year in 2020, we had budgeted $6,000 for the alarm system upgrade. That was based on budget numbers that we received in mid-2019. When it came time, we also found out that the fire halls required internet service for the alarm system to be upgraded. The reason for the upgrade is we run a fob system very similar to Town Hall, and our older system is limited to 50 fobs. We now have 55 firefighters on the roster, plus myself and the deputy, the admin, plus operations staff. So that means that we need more fobs. Our systems can't handle that. Some of the wiring started to degrade. So what we ended up doing is we had all of the fire stations were inspected by Password, our alarm company, and they recommended what was needed to do the upgrades. And that's why we see this carry forward. We now have internet at all the fire stations. When the town hall moved to the voice over internet phones, we also went forward and did those upgrades at the station. So now we're able to perform those upgrades, which we weren't able to in 2020.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Okay, seeing none. Oh, Councillor Cridland, sorry.
No, that's okay. Thank you. Through you, Mayor. I might have just missed this. My apologies. I was just having some water. But why did this double then from 6 to 12? Maybe you mentioned that.
Yeah, so initially, so the initial budget price for 2020 came in the middle of 2019. So now we are a year and a half since then, and we actually had a quote provided by the company. They inspected each hall during their annual maintenance, and they're the ones that provided us the work that was needed to be done to bring these systems up, so that way we can use them as we need.
So we're not getting more, we're getting the same as what you asked for in 2019, only this is now the new price?
Right.
Okay, and can all this wait till the new fire hall? I mean, are we gonna have to do all this again in another 8 months because of whatever the addition is of a new fire hall, new fobs, new everything?
Well, I mean, we could wait, but it also means that we have 15 to 20 firefighters that can't get into the building.
Okay, thanks.
Are there any other alternatives to the fobs? You know, the push button, that sort of thing? Chief?
I mean, we do have little lock boxes, but that's the same code that I think's been in service, and I don't really want to say what that is right now.
Yeah.
It is an option, sure, and it is how we're getting by now, but certainly it's not the greatest system, which is the reason for the upgrade.
Okay, Councillor McClellan.
Just a quick question. Can you clone a fob so two guys have the same number that's on it? And who cares if
No,
it's number
so-
48 gets used twice?
No, sorry. We tried that.
Just asking.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Anything else on this,
Mayor.
Councillor Cridland?
Well, I'll just do a follow-up then. So if we do this now, I think I'm hearing I have to do it all over again when there's a new fire hall. So we're going to see a bill just like this because we have to redo it because of the new fire hall. Is that what I'm hearing?
Well, no.
Okay.
The
It's
3,000.
not throwaway.
Oh,
It's not
no.
throwaway.
Because when the new hall's built, it'll have the alarm system built into that project. So it's not
Okay.
another $12,000 upgrade because the new hall will have the new alarm system when it's built.
Okay.
The 3 and 4 will continue to have the upgrades. Stations,
Thank you.
wherever we end up with station 2, have something anyways.
That'll be a spare.
Well, so yes, so it doesn't really make sense to do 1 and 2, but
Well, it doesn't.
we'll get there. I mean, it's not a big number. So that's enough on that. That's great. You've answered all my questions. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Okay. Richard, did you have some input there?
Through your worship, just if maybe the chief wasn't clear, but this when he upgrades the system, it's going to be similar to what town hall is. You don't have to upgrade those halls moving forward, and they're an expandable system. So right now, the chief has firemen that can't get into the halls because it's locked out at 50 fobs. The new system that he's proposing is expandable, that he'll be able to get a lot more fobs in future to be able to use on those halls as well.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Interesting discussion on that. Seeing no further questions, moving on to the library building. Thank you, Chief. And Richard?
Through your worship to yourself and members of council, part of this project is a carryover from last year. We investigated the sidewalk because we were going to replace the sidewalk and curbs in front of the library because it's always holding water. It's like a ponding effect in there. One side, we realized one side is fine. The other side is actually a problem because it's got nowhere for the water to go. That's the reason why it's ponding. And when they laid the asphalt in the parking lot, they didn't lay it correctly. So we had to investigate how we could get drainage for that sidewalk. And while we were doing that, so that portion is a carryover from last year because we needed additional drainage, which ties into the next project. This budget item includes the sink replacement, which we didn't get to last year, as well as the sidewalk curb. But we've also added the visual alarm for the fire alarm system. As you know, some of the upgrades for the fire alarm includes a visual aid, a visual alarm, rather than not just a vocal alarm, which we're adding to the additional to all our buildings as we're moving forward as part of the accessibility audit we had. So some of this project, we're going to be able to move forward to immediately, which is including the sink and the alarm. But some of the sidewalk issues and curb, et cetera, are going to rely on the next project, which is the storm sewer project, in order to get the relief for the water to actually outlet and get rid of the water.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Councillor Gilmore.
Thank you, Mayor. To Richard. Can you just explain the what all is going on with the sink replacement for the 6,500? It's got to be more than the sink.
Sorry, through your worship to Councillor Gilmore, it's to make it handicap accessible as well. It's not just the sink, it's the entire assembly to make it handicap accessible.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
No further questions on this one, and moving over. 18, storm sewers. Richard.
Through your worship to members of council, so while we were investigating the sidewalk in a place for the water to drain off the sidewalk to the library, we were looking for an outlet for it, and we're going to have to expand the storm sewer to create an outlet for the sidewalk. When we decided to look at that and how we can expand the system, we realized and we found that we had a collapse on the arena parking lot, which we identified this past year. But we also had some concerns raised at the fire hall because the catch basins that were used in this existing storm sewer system are literally culverts standing up on end. They were steel CSP culverts standing up on end. So they're actually not proper catch basins. So the plan is to replace those with proper catch basins. We're going to be able to utilize some of the storm sewer that's existing because it is plastic and it is in good condition. But some of the areas that we're going to have to replace completely are in the arena parking lot area, especially along the pond. The steel culverts that are in that location right now, there is no bottom left in it. It's actually rotting out. So the plan is to fix the existing storm sewer that's there and put an additional sections in so we can drain the sidewalk at the library and the top end of the parking lot as well.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, comments? All necessary work. Councillor Cridland.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I totally agree. It's necessary. In fact, it's pretty exciting to be getting to these kinds of projects that we're taking care of things. I think for the public, because this is all underground, I want to make sure everybody's like dressed so they can see that we're working underground and maybe make some kind of parade out of this. I mean, it's just going to be one of those things we never see, and yet lives will be improved because we got rid of the water. So I think this is a great project, and it's just too bad nobody sees it. But thanks, Richard.
Okay, anything else there? Not seeing anything. Moving on. Rural Water Supply, Project 19.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor and Council. So this project actually kind of ties to the previous one. During the master fire plan that was done in 12 and 13 and the ops review, there was 11 recommendations that was presented to Council for establishing a plan for identification and installation of more rural water supply access points. Part of fire underwriters, when they grade, when insurance companies grade or underwrite your property, they want to know how far you are from a fire hall, and they also want to know how far you are from a hydrant or a dry hydrant. So the idea here was that we can identify locations of opportunity where we can provide fire protection. We don't have hydrants or municipal water, so if we can find locations with impounded water, ponds, streams, bridges, or in this case, if Richard happens to be working in the storm sewers there in that pond, say for instance we have to replace one of the hydrants, we have the capital there to do that. So that's this plan here. Certainly, if no project, it's a project of opportunity, if you will, where we can address these things and move forward. Every time one of these are put in, I update that through GPS to fire underwriters, and they plot that. And anybody who's within 5K of that, they now have a recognized water source within their area.
Okay, how many of these do we have now, Chief?
So ones that are fully accessible that the township operates is about 3. Now there are several private facilities, churches, the schools, some of those areas. They also have impounded water that we can access if needed, but we don't actually operate very many of our own.
Okay, questions?
My only question was where it is, and he answered that, so we're good.
Yep. Okay, thank you, Chief. Project 20, Personal Protective Equipment Program.
So similar to what we started in 2019, 2020, this is just a this is the annual program that was established and continued. Obviously adjusted for any inflation and additional staff that we continue to recruit.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Seeing none. Project 21, Annual Capital Fire Equipment Program.
Again, very similar to the PPE program. We run about $740,000 worth of fire equipment. That's not apparatus. And so part of that is the annual replacement to make sure that we're not using old or outdated equipment. So this is just an annual project with, again, a stepped increase to account for inflation.
Okay, thank you. Questions on that? Seeing none. Moving to Project 22, the backstop. I think we'll look to Richard for that one.
Through your worship, to members of council, this is actually a project that's been carried over several times. As you recall, this has to do with potential funding that was allocated from Canada Summer Games. But because of Canada Summer Games being postponed and a bunch of things that have been taking place due to COVID, they haven't finalized those plans. So once the commitment is there from the Canada Summer Games, which they still pledge the money towards us, and once those agreements are finalized, we'll be able to put forward the project and we'll get it completed with funding from that source.
Thank you. Questions? Okay, seeing none. Sorry, Councillor Cridlin.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. Just to Richard, again, everything you've said around it being carried forward and all the reasons. If this happens to not, for whatever reason, go forward on the grant situation, our next page, when we turn it, can you maybe speak to whether or not it could be included there so that it just doesn't stay out there? I think we agree that it's probably something that would be of reasonable value, and maybe just comment it when you get to the next page. Thank you.
Richard?
Yes, your worship, we could definitely do that. Even though it may not have been included in the next page's project, we could definitely review that. We did do some of the expenditure because we did build the fencing around Ball Diamond number 1, which we never had the outfield fencing previously. And that was part of the commitment to that. So our portion of the commitment has been allocated already. So this portion is from them to replace the backstops, but definitely we could review that as part of the process when we get into the next project as well.
Okay, then going to the next project, 23, Recreation Complex. A big number.
Through your worship, that's correct. This was a grant application that we filed back in 2000 years ago, and it's taken us a long time to get through this process. And if we are successful with the grant, our requirement for, because it's a long-term project, I believe it's a 5-year project, phased in over 5 years. Our portion of the commitment is the $42,000 to be included in the budget. And the grant applications, like I believe by the time it's all over and done with, the project is $1.5 million. And our portion this year would be 42. And I believe once it's built in, and then a potential, I think it's 60, I believe. I'm not positive. I don't have it in front of me. Moving forward, our commitments over the next couple of years is another 60. And then the project will receive full funding from that portion, or from that point forward, moving forward.
Okay, thank you. Questions? This one has the walking trail in it that we have. Councillor Van Vliet.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I got lots, Richard. So in the outline here, we don't have any lighting over the playground. I would think that would be a place that would really need lighting. If you're out in there, okay, you got your hand up, go.
Through your worship, it's called, I call it ball diamond lighting, but yeah, part of the plan that we had moving forward when we reviewed the entire lighting program was to put a lighting for the tennis courts as well as the playground area will be covered under the same poles and electricity for the ball diamond lighting.
Okay, and you've obviously strategic planned that out so that if you're playing, you're not getting the lights from the playground or the tennis in your eyes.
That's correct.
Okay. What else? I'm not on board with the walking trail or pavilion yet. I have to rethink that a little bit. I think this whole plan needs a lot of public input on it because it's a big space. I know that I've used that space for a number of years and a lot of families in Wainfleet have. I just think it needs some public input on here before we spend this kind of money. But it's a great report.
Okay, any other comments? Councillor McClellan?
Yeah, one question is the tile drain and storm work. There's $400,000 in there. These farmers are tile drain in farm fields for $1,500 an acre. Where do we get all this money? Like, I don't get it.
Richard?
Through your worship to Councilor McClellan, it's not normal tile drainage that you see in a farmer's field where they, because our situation is we're 99% of our property is clay. So if we plowed it under, we would literally have to bring in topsoil to literally top dress the entire property when we're done. This type of drainage that we're proposing is what they call slit drainage, where they actually put 2-inch drainage in every 2 feet or every 10 feet, and that goes into a header system. And then it's backfilled with sand because the clay soils that we have doesn't drain. So we need to put slit drainage in to provide sand in order to get that overland drainage.
Okay, follow up, Councillor McClellan?
Yeah, so that still sounds like a lot of money, and the same way with the price tag on the lighting. $365,000 seems out to lunch, but maybe there's an excuse for it, I don't know. Councillor
Cridland?
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I'm just going to echo the same comments as Councillor Van Vliet brought forward about the pavilion and the walking trail and the public input. So the process to get this project through, I'm sure we'll hear more about that, but I'd be very interested in knowing how that's going to roll out. And then just again, a minor one, the areas that we do use a lot, like the fair area, and certainly the farmers market area, I'm just going to assume at this point that those are really key areas that these funds will be invested in. So again, in the absence of the detailed report, maybe just comment briefly on those areas.
Through your worship to Councillor Cridland, the field property that's utilized by the fair now is drained because that was our septic bed. So that is already tied into a drainage system. The lighting is included. There are some poles that are along the Marshville property or background that those lights will be replaced with LEDs as well. But for the biggest portion of it, it is mostly to the recreational property itself, because that's what the grant was actually applied for. And we do have some restrictions. But part of the rec master plan, for instance, was utilized in applying for that grant. And we had the rec master plan committee that actually recommended the walking trail. When we applied for these grants, a lot of that information was carried forward when we applied for the grant. So that's the reason why I was put in there. We did have public input as part of that recreation master plan. But again, that's something we may be able to to try and alter, but because that was in the grant application, we may not be able to qualify for some of those funds if we don't include.
If you don't include it, you don't.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Follow up.
Through you, Mayor, maybe just
Go ahead, Councillor Cridlin.
thank you. Sorry about that. Through you. Again, so just on the washroom upgrades, in terms of, I don't know where it's going to land, but we're just building out there and upgrading to our normal levels of usage. I would hope that when we have large events, maybe once or twice a year, that we have another solution other than, you know, using our regular washroom facilities for just, you know, our local events. So again, not having seen the details, I'm sure you've got that covered, but and there's only a small amount, or the smallest amount, I should say, it's not small by any means, of the total project is on washroom improvements. So that's just getting us to a basic standard then for our washrooms, maybe like the accessibility issues that we've talked about in the past, right? We're not adding more washroom capacity per se.
We will be adding, sorry, through your worship to Councillor Cleveland, we are adding a little bit of capacity, but we are basically fixing everything to make it handicap accessible, as well as freshening up and making it so potentially it could be used year round. Because right now it's summertime only. There's no heat in that building. There's no way of stopping the pipes from freezing. Let's put it that way. So we literally shut it down every year in the fall and start it back up in the spring. But we will be able to use it year round when we're finished. Plus it'll be completely handicap accessible when we're done.
Thank you. No further questions.
Councillor Van Vliet.
Richard, when we do these upgrades to the washroom, will it be vented properly so it doesn't have the atrocious odor coming out of it?
The ones in the ball diamond washrooms?
Yes.
Well, part of the issue is that's where our main septic tank is, our pumping station. We're trying to fix that problem, obviously. But yes, we do have to redo some of the plumbing in there because there's actually a cistern underneath that floor that we weren't even aware of, but it's there for some reason. And we don't know what it actually feeds. So it's got stagnant water in it as well, and that could be part of the potential issues. But yes, we will be looking at all the plumbing and all the upgrading as part of that process.
Okay,
the concern we had was similar to what we had ran into at in the women's washroom, for instance, at the arena. For years, we had this smell in the women's washroom. And as we went to upgrade, we found some additional work that needed to be done with drainage, with venting, with copper pipes in the walls. It was actually venting in the wall rather than outside. So I'm guessing we're probably going to run into a similar issue when we do this one. That's why we've included the $63,000, and it's got some contingency built into that as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, these things always, when you start into them, there's always surprises, and so you do have to build in the extra. Thank you. Any other questions on 23? Okay, moving on. Project 24, the columbarium. Richard?
Again, your worship, this is, I keep bringing it back every year because it's something we need to keep at the forefront of our minds. We currently only have one columbarium, and that's located at the cemetery along the lake there. We keep monitoring the niches and how much availability is still there. We're currently, I believe, at 18 remaining. Actually, when I wrote the report, I think it was 18. I believe we're down to 17 now. But we need to keep it at the forefront. The unfortunate part is these projects do increase yearly. But staff aren't recommending we replace it just yet because the remaining niches that we have at the columbarium are on the back side. And they don't sell. Once we build the new one, people are going to want to go in the new one, and we'll never sell the old one again. So I want to make sure we can see that realization of revenue coming back from the existing columbarium before we commit to the new one. So we're proposing to, I believe, again, maybe put this one forward to next year, but it's something we need to keep on the forefront that as we move forward, we're going to have to build a new columbarium as we go forward.
How many do we sell a year, average?
Through your worship, we normally, it's averaging between, well, it's funny because we're going through a lot of cremation plots, etc. Columbarium, we're anywhere between 4 and 7. So it could be a year, it could be 2 years, it could be 3 years by the time we need it. But we're monitoring it. My guess is the way we're moving and the way the numbers have been, our cemetery has been pretty busy. We've been up over 100 burials for the past 3 years, which is, we were down in the 80s and 70s before that, but we're up over 100 burials a year for the past 3 years. So things, I'd hate to say we're busy, but unfortunately we have been busy, and we will be keeping an eye on this as we move forward.
And I just have one further on that. We recognize that we are now at a point where we have to get another one. What kind of time frame is involved from, okay, the decision's made to build a new one to the time it's actually built and for sale? Is that a long process or?
No, I mean, in talks with 2 of the columbarium suppliers, they're looking at a turnaround time of, they were looking at a turnaround time of 6 to 8 weeks. But again, it's something, COVID, has placed a lot of restrictions and a lot of additional issues in our way. But I would be looking at like a 6 to 8 month process for this columbarium, which includes sidewalks, foundations, etc., as we move forward.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McClone.
Could I suggest that maybe we wait till we're down to 5 and come and see us, and we'll give you the okay to build it?
Yeah, that's probably right. Okay, any other questions, comments? Councillor Cridland, we're all good. I don't want to miss Councillor Cridland. Good, okay. The final project on the book, Project 25, is the Integrated Library System Upgrade. Who can speak to that? Richard or Mallory?
So through the Mayor to all of Council, so this project is just moving towards the centralized library system for materials. So it was approved in last year's budget. There was a number of municipalities in Niagara joining this, this integrated system, whereby you can rent from other neighboring libraries and return at neighboring libraries. So once we gave our commitment last year, they just kind of slotted us in, and it was for late last year. So we've started the process, but it's not complete. It's going to be completed this year, but it was just based on timing and the other municipalities that they had to do when they could incorporate us into that plan.
Okay, thank you. Questions, comments? Okay, seeing none, that is the capital budget discussion for this evening. We don't have any closed meeting. Anybody have anything for closed? No, right, William?
Mr. Mayor, just a comment. First, I'd like to thank once again staff for putting in the hard work and the long hours to sort of get this to you in the form that it's in. Again, there was a lot of work that was done in the background in order to bring you a document that was sustainable and that continued to move the township's capital program forward. I'd like to point out that the budget before you today represents a grand total of about $6.3 million in capital works. The bulk of those monies are coming from reserves and various sources of revenue, but about $576,000 of that is actually coming directly from the tax levy. And that's an important number to look at, as was pointed out by the treasurer at the beginning. If you compare that 576 this year to the capital program last year, which from a tax levy perspective cost the township about $447,000, that represents about a 2% increase from a financial tax levy perspective, which, as noted, was a good sort of if you will, best practice to see that capital program improving in accordance with the cost of inflation from a year-to-year basis. And if you project that forward to, for example, next year, if you are successful in getting this $576,000 into place in 2021, then perhaps our capital program next year will be coming forward with about, if we keep the same 2% increase, an amount of around $706,000, again, to sort of continually improve that. But again, to emphasize what we're talking about for this year, we're proposing to you a $6.2 million capital program with a tax levy impact of about $576,000, which altogether amounts to a 1.98% tax levy increase.
Okay. Thank you. Any comments, questions to that? If not, look for a mover and seconder to adjourn our, receive this report this evening. Councillor McClellan and Councillor Van Vliet. All in favor of receiving and adjourning the meeting? Yeah, we can do it this way. Councillor Quidland.
In favor.
That is received, and our meeting is adjourned.